Y'all are a beautiful sight, you know. When I was a little girl, one of my favorite people in the planet was my grandfather, Papa. And there's a story that sticks with me about when Papa was a young man. He was working as a chauffeur for a British tea plantation owner in Sri Lanka. And that owner used to like to get drunk and make Papa give him the keys to the car and say, move over to the passenger seat. And because he wanted to drive, and he would careen all over these little country roads, running into ditches and over embankments. Papa would come home sometimes with scrapes and bruises on his body, but he would patch himself up and he would go to work the next day because he needed that job to feed his family. Well, this is a metaphor for America, because in America, we have a certain brand of white male leadership that has been driving us into every conceivable ditch, from climate change to massive wealth inequality to the largest prison population on the planet. And the thing about it is, they aren't just driving us into ditches anymore. They are headed for a cliff from which human life on the planet may not survive. So I don't know about you all, but when I look at the face of my 7-year-old daughter and I look at the courage in this room, I am very clear that we are part of a generation that is done sitting in the passenger seat. We are done patching up our cuts and bruises, and we are done postponing our freedom. We are going to take the keys. And we know when women of color take the keys, we drive not just ourselves to freedom, we drive this whole country and everybody in it to freedom. And I want to talk about one area where we need to grab the keys, and that is in the realm of electoral money. Because the majority of large electoral money is controlled by people who actually want to keep us in the passenger seat. And we know how dangerous it is to put that much power in a passive position. How many of you all know what it feels like to be treated and seen as bodies to be moved to the ballot box to vote for candidates that you were never invited to help select? How many of you all know what it feels like to be invited to give testimony at the state legislature on bills that you are never invited to help author? So we all lose out when women of color are put in the passenger seat. Women of color, and I want to say black women in particular, who are the founders of Me Too and Black Lives Matter, two of the most important movements of our time. Women of color who we see come out at the ballot box and stand against hate more than any other demographic group consistently from coast to coast of this country. Women of color are the MVP of social change, and electoral dollars need to stop trying to put us on the bench and then have the audacity to wonder why the scoreboard looks like it does on every issue that progressives claim to care about, from climate change to economic justice to immigrant rights. So we haven't controlled the money, but I want to pose a question to you all. What if we did? What if there was a place that donors could put their money where the people who controlled where that money went on the ground were some of the baddest women of color freedom fighters in our country today? I'm talking about sisters who are to 2018 what Angela Davis and what Sylvia Rivera and Fannie Lou Hamer were to 1969. What if these sisters were in charge? And what if they were doing that through a foundation that was founded and run by women of color who come out of grassroots organizing in our communities? And what if that foundation understood how tired communities of color are as being treated as sites of extraction for our cheap labor, for oil, for uranium, and for our votes by people who don't care about us? And who said, you know, we are going to support the best and brightest women of color C4 organizations across the country and treat them and the communities that they support like partners in the long-range work of building power and self-determination for our communities and changing our material conditions. So one thing I know about women of color is we know how to turn a what if into reality. And we did that last year when we launched Groundswell Action Fund, which is all of these things that I described, and now the largest fund in the country that is centering women of color C4 work. So if you all are interested in putting women of color in the driver's seat of electoral funding in this country, see us, lift us, fund us. You can look on Facebook on our page to make a donation. Let's take back those keys.